Hello, boys and girls. This is your host with the most, JJ, coming to you from the JJ Meets World Studios. The goal of this podcast is to meet every single person on the planet, and I'm re-meeting Sabrina in this episode. We get to talk about print media. We get to talk about small-town bars. We get to talk about Tappan and their alien invasion that took place. Plus, I'm going to put a soapbox down that's going to get Tucker and I talking about cardboard boxes. All of this and so much more on today's episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Here, let me adjust my soapbox real quick right before I get on top of it. Crosswalks are there for a reason. I am talking to both motorists and pedestrians, because if you are driving a car, you need to give way to pedestrians at crosswalks. And you need to, like, if there's a crosswalk coming up, you need to think about that. Don't pull your car halfway into the crosswalk. People need to use that. Even if there's nobody crossing when you pull up to it, don't block that space. It's ridiculous. When you take a right on a red, which you're allowed to do, you need to check the crosswalk first, because there might be a pedestrian.
JJ.
Yes.
This is a really positive message, and I'm glad you're sharing it. But do you not see the irony of you putting your soapbox in the middle of a crosswalk?
No, I do not.
Message?
I think it's important. This is how you help direct traffic.
Okay, well, this school bus here needs to really get past you real fast.
These kids need to hear what I gotta say. These kids who are headed to St. Christian Academy need to hear what I'm saying about crosswalks, because now it's time for the pedestrian side of it. If you are a pedestrian and you are crossing anywhere other than the crosswalk, it is not my fault if I have to slam on my brakes. That is not the area I'm supposed to be scanning for people. And it's about time someone stood up and said what needs to be said. Now, that being said, I will get off of this soapbox and I will stop impeding traffic, but let this all be a lesson to us.
I appreciate that. Can you also tell me where you found a soapbox? Because I don't think I've ever actually seen a soapbox anywhere.
I had to order a lot of Lever 2000.
It came in a crate.
Yeah, it like a lot. I also had to order it from 1922. Before cardboard.
From a Sears and Roebuck catalog.
I miss, when was the last time you ordered something out of a catalog? Have you ever ordered something out of a catalog?
You know, I'm trying to think about that. I think the last time I actually ordered something out of a physical catalog would have actually been back in elementary school when the Scholastic Book Fair would be going on, or whatever they would call it.
Sure. And
you could order books through there. That may have been the last time I actually did. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those book orders. I get a catalog to my home called like Hammacher Schlemmer, and it claims to be the oldest catalog in the world.
So is it just it's a magazine essentially showing you, hey, this is what's in our warehouse. Want to buy some of this stuff?
Yeah, but it's positioned sort of like Sky Mall does. So you know what I'm talking about? The way that they formatted Sky Mall catalog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so it's some stuff is ultra high end and some's just kind of gadgety. You can tell that they recently were like, listen, we got to include some PPE in this one because there's super fancy face shields and hard case little masks and things like that. But then it also has amazing things like, hey, it's an end table made of hickory stained with delicious deep maple. But then at the back end of it, it's also a dog kennel.
I mean, it's not a terrible idea.
Yeah, right? Like for people who feel the need to kennel their dogs and read a magazine.
So are you ordering things out of this thing regularly, or is this something you just like to browse? Because browsing catalogs can be a lot of fun, depending on what the catalog is filled with. So I remember we would get probably with the newspaper, like a catalog of Halloween costumes you could get. Back in the day. And that was always fun to look through, even though we never ordered anything from it. I had a couple of Lego magazines, which were essentially catalogs, where you could order stuff. Never did, but always loved browsing. And I don't order a ton of stuff on Amazon, but I look at a ton of stuff on Amazon. So is that what you do, or are you actually ordering things from it?
I've ordered a couple of things. One of the things I ordered was, it looks like the silhouette of a woman with one hand on her hip, kind of cocked to the side, and one hand out as if she could be like holding a tray maybe. And then the head is the lampshade. And it was a gift that my sister and I got my mom back in the day. And you could get a 3-foot tall one that was, like $110, or you could get a 6.5-foot tall one for $800.
Woo.
And I mean, they're big. I mean, this thing is more than life size. In fact, it probably is the height of our guest today, Sabrina, because Sabrina's a tall woman. So we ordered this thing, and my sister was at the house when they delivered it, and she goes, "You got to come to the house because something got messed up." I said, "Okay." So I went to the house, and there in our garage, it looked like a scene from Indiana Jones because a giant crate arrived. The kind of crate that has wood on the outside.
Yeah.
And it's huge. This thing's got to stand 10 feet tall. And the UPS guy is still there. And
the kind of crate that says this was on a boat.
Right, exactly. Like this came from a great distance. I expect when I open it, there's going to be like wood shavings inside, and possibly, something that's going to spark an international adventure for my sister and I. So we opened it, and they had accidentally sent us the 6.5-foot scale one, not the 3-foot tall one, because we ordered the 3-foot. We paid for the 3-foot. Ooh. And the UPS driver said, "I have never delivered something like this," and he called it a movie crate. And so he wanted to watch us open it. Now, of course, at that time I'm like, well, how the hell am I going to open this thing?
Hold on. That's kind of weird, though. That's kind of crossing a line, right? Like, let me watch you open your package I just delivered to you.
I mean,
I'd be like, get out of here, dude. Don't you have to do other things?
I guarantee you, because this is in the evening. It was dark already. This must have been like the first thing they packed at the way back end of his truck. And it was probably his last delivery that day, because it's giant. It is enormous. And we were fine with him hanging around and watching us open this thing. I think he was just curious about what was in it. And we knew, God, this is a lot of packing for a 3.5-foot tall lamp. And now my sister has that lamp in her home, and she loves it. And it was just a very exciting piece of furniture to purchase. I could have stood on top of that and really had a great soapbox and be like, "This is a lamp lady box," in the middle of the street. But I will always remember opening that package. And one last little thing about packages as we go. At the time of recording, it's the season of giving, and we live in a time right now where people are ordering more things online from local retailers as well as national retailers. Tucker, when you were a kid, it was a big deal when you had a cardboard box, right?
I mean, like one that like a fridge may have come in?
Not even a fridge, but even think of like a box, that would be, like 2 feet by 2 feet, right? Like a box that could actually hold a good amount of stuff. I remember my mom saving good boxes. Like if she got a blender, that box is like, oh, look at this. This is a good box. We could store old tax documents or something in this box. And nowadays we just get a box and it's no big deal because we're getting 40 of them delivered from Amazon every week. I don't think kids today are going to value a cardboard box the way I did when I was a kid.
Well, I mean, if I could fit in the cardboard box, it was a magical toy, because now it was a fort. So I would usually cut holes for like windows, and I make sort of a door for it as well. And then I would actually full on, like, I would sleep in giant cardboard boxes if we had them as a kid, because it was like making a fort. It's like the best toy ever.
You loved that, huh?
Oh my God, it was the
in
best.
my own box.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I never remember sleeping in boxes. I do remember turning them into like the robot outsides.
Sometimes I would fall asleep just on the floor of the bathroom because the tile was so nice and cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night on the floor in the bathroom. So I would have gotten up, like slept walk or something into the bathroom, and then fell asleep again. That's where I would have slept there. So boxes was no big deal.
And nowadays, where do you sleep?
In my bed.
In your bed, but you're not. What about? Don't you ever want it to be cool?
Oh, well, the fan is on all the time, constantly.
On all the time.
Oh yeah.
I can tell you this much. I don't like sleeping in tents because I always get too sweaty. I haven't figured out how to sleep in a tent and not get sweaty.
What do you put down? Like, what do you sleep on? Because I've slept in tents fine enough, but it was never really comfortable ever.
Put an air mattress in there.
Okay. I mean, air mattresses I think are just okay, but I don't know. I don't dig them. Pass.
I don't mind an air mattress as long as there isn't a slow leak in it, and by like morning I'm pretty much just sleeping on the ground. That's where I get a little uffy. Let's get right to our guest. We do not discuss what she sleeps on, but we do discuss what she sleeps in. Our guest today is a returning guest. Sabrina is already made an appearance on JJ Meets World, but we do a fun check-in here, and we talk about the future of the High Plains Reader and the pivot that they've had to make this year. We also talk about loving your heritage and how food can be a part of your heritage and small town bars. We cover a lot of ground with Sabrina in this one, and she's always a fun guest to have on. And so, when she completes the hat trick and we have her on a third time, we will get definitive answers as to her belief in aliens. But until we get to that one, you get episode number 2 right here, right now. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World.
JJ Meets World.
Sabrina. I'm not talking about the teenage witch. I'm talking about a previous guest making a second appearance on JJ Meets World. How are you, my dear friend?
I'm good. It feels good to be back.
I bet it. Well, it feels good to be doing anything in 2020, doesn't it?
God, that's for sure.
So let's start this right off, because your personal story is like the ultimate story of 2020. There is low times, there's high times, there's making use of the time that you have. So let's roll back the clock to, let's say the first week of March of 2020. Tell me about what your life has been since then.
It's been a lot better. The first weekend in March, we got the news that things were starting to shut down, and including the High Plains Reader. We were on about a 7-month hiatus due to the virus. We lost a bunch of our advertisers because they weren't having business. They were having tough times, so we were having tough times, and I was unemployed for a number of months, and I was trying to treat it like an art residency by doing a bunch of leather work and artwork, and even had a garden, but that wasn't too terribly fruitful. I think all I could grow were tomatoes, but I made some good soup out of it. I reached out to my friend Tony Bender out at the Wishick Star and the Ashley Tribune, and he's hired me on, and I started working for them right as we were starting to print at the High Plains Reader too. So I feel like I'm getting an education here.
What do you think is the driving force for someone who like yourself who loves to create. How long did you just kind of sit and wait before you decided to start getting like saying like, you know what, I'm going to make use of my time and I'm going to make some art?
Well, I had to have a couple of days to feel sorry for myself, losing my job. So, I don't know. I had a bunch of stuff around the house and was trying to, I don't know, make a little bit of extra side cash because I wasn't sure if I was going to qualify for unemployment or not. And, like when you're on unemployment, without that stimulus or that boost, it's half of your income. So you're kind of sitting there thinking like, oh God, what am I going to do? What can I do? I had nothing but time on my hands and a bunch of craft supplies. So started pounding some leather. My friend commissioned a guitar strap for me. So I started making guitar straps and belts and bracelets and stuff like that.
What's the process of working with leather? I remember making something at a summer camp once and being surprised how much like moisture was involved.
Yeah, it's a really interesting medium. It's very sculptural. So it was kind of like it's all based off of texture. So I have, some basic tools that I use for, initially carving it. You have to proof your leather, which means like you have to make sure that there's a proper moisture content to it. And then I'd use tracing paper to trace a design onto it with, by going over with a pencil. And just, you start out with your swivel knife, which is essentially kind of it's almost like a screwdriver, but sharper, and you draw your image on it with that. And then you use a couple basic tools. And it was actually kind of like the ultimate craft of 2020 because you can let out a little bit of aggression on it.
I think I made a leather bracelet when I was at camp. And I feel like I saw it a couple maybe months ago. It's something that my mother had kept for all those years.
Aww.
And I was kind of amazed at how much life there still was in it. We're talking about 30 years later and it still looked really, it still had a great shape. The leather wasn't cracking. It looked good.
Well, and leather is one of those things that it's kind of amazing. You can have like a tooled belt, for 50 years and it'll still be good, or tooled purses and stuff. And and I guess I'm sure it depends on what it is. If you keep it conditioned, or else if it's in a good climate, if it's not too damp or whatever, leather will last for 100 years.
Yeah, I try and keep none of my climates too damp.
Right.
Inside, outside, it doesn't matter. I try and keep them all pretty. What's the word for like a desert? Arid. I try and keep it very arid.
There you go.
I've got a good friend who accuses me of liking the temperature set to balmy, and it comes from the fact that like back in the day, I didn't run my air conditioning in my car, and I didn't want to roll down the windows, and it all stems from a special with the Tiny Toons summer, like how I spent my summer vacation, where they were like, well, air conditioning wastes gas. I'll roll down the window. And the wife goes like, no, I don't want the people to think we can't afford air conditioning. And so from that, he's accused me for a long time of liking it to be too like balmy inside there. And I thought, no, I'm a man who would prefer it cool rather than hot.
That's hilarious because I literally will drive. Well, not anymore, not right now, but I'll literally in the right weather will drive around with my windows down and my AC running. Like I like the initial cold blast I'm getting in my face from the AC, but I still want the smell from like outside coming in at the same time. So it's a good mixture. But yeah, super wasteful in that sense.
It's hard to appease a man like Tucker, a man of the world.
A man of refined tastes.
So Sabrina, you also like, and it probably wasn't just, well, okay, so this is what I want to get into next. So the High Plains Reader, to which if you don't know the history of the High Plains Reader, we have a great episode dedicated to it on JJ Meets World. It would have been just as easy to say, well, we had a good run and not fire up the High Plains Reader again. why do you get it up and running again? I've got my own feelings why, but I'd like to know what yours are.
Well, we're pretty passionate. I mean, you might not know it, but we're pretty passionate about what we do, and we see that there's a need for it in the community. It's a community mouthpiece, and and John and Raul, they're pretty stubborn, and they and they believe in what we're putting out. So I mean, and it's difficult right now too, because there isn't nearly as much going on, and we've made different changes, like not having a calendar or best bets and stuff like that. But I don't know, I think that there's a certain need for it in the community.
Well, I don't know where to go and have the best French fries since we didn't get a best of the best this last spring. I'm completely lost without that special edition of the High Plains Reader.
Right.
Because I don't like the other guys and all, and how they promote just, like chain restaurants. Not a fan of that. I'll tell you one thing that I appreciate about the High Plains Reader. It's not like you guys came back with fluff pieces. You came back with some of the best journalism I have seen out of the High Plains Reader, because a lot happened. A lot happened between March and getting those printing presses back up again. And there was a lot to be said by people who are staff writers with you guys, people who've written only a couple of articles. And I mean, I imagine you guys have enough content just sitting there in emails at this point for the next 20 issues.
Right. Well, and with that comeback issue, everybody has a story about their experience with COVID. Like I have a friend who's an art teacher in Bismarck, and he was very vocal online, and I kind of reached out to him, and I was just like, well, can you share your experience? And plus he was putting together an art show with his son, and I just can't imagine, and what better way to tell the story than have the person, like, from their perspective. And there was Michael Strike, a musician in town, and he was kind of talking about his experience. Like he had, and for a lot of us, 2020 was going to be our year, and he had tours booked out for up until 2021, and he wound up having to cancel all that. And I don't know, it's just interesting. And I think that what my goal has always been is I wanted people to be able to share their perspectives. And I think that, if you can gain some perspective on a matter, that's the most valuable thing that you can acquire.
Okay, so let's talk about the business side of things. So you shut down because your advertisers are telling you, gosh, we don't have any money for advertising. We just had to we had to shut down for a month and a half. We cut our business by 9/10 by only being able to offer curbside to go food. So you guys get back up and running again. But now we're facing with the fact that longtime advertisers are closing left and right.
Right.
And so that changes things for what's going on for you guys as well too. And I have to imagine there's a constant discussion there about, well, okay, even some of the places where I know I always get my High Plains Reader have now closed.
Right.
And so I've got to change where I'm going to pick up an issue at some point. So, I mean, these have got to be some major conversations taking place behind closed doors.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, we've been a weekly, since the beginning of HPR, and we've cut our print runs. So now we're printing, we were printing every other week and trying to make sure that, we're still staying afloat. But now with everything that's going on, and plus now come January, it's going to be a slow season for ad revenue, and it always has been. So we're actually going to be reducing our issues again. So we're going to be printing once a month.
So are you doing a larger issue, or is it the same amount of pages? You're just putting a whole month's worth of content into one issue.
Well, that's a good question, because our the number of pages that we have are dependent upon our ad count. So we're hoping to have bigger issues, but I guess we'll have to see how much we're selling. I
think this is also a chance too where I love there's a meme I've seen on social media about, hey, that local restaurant that you always go to when you're putting together like a charity silent auction, or you need something for like a high school booster club. Well, that group now needs you to go and make good on purchasing at their facility. I can't imagine the number of places that have asked you for free publicity and to do a story about something that they're passionate about or their business, their organization over the years. And now it's their turn to come around and support you guys.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And I know that that can be a really hard pill to swallow sometimes. And my personal opinion on this, I've sat in so many meetings with so many salespeople who are trying to pretend like COVID doesn't exist. And they're telling people, yeah, you know, you got to advertise. If you don't advertise, people aren't going to know your brand. This is how you stay out there in front of it. And they're like, so, you know, last year we did this. Why don't we do the same thing again this year? And I think, who are you? Who do you think you are? You know, my personal opinion is there are the same number of ad dollars out there, but what people expect is for you to be a better steward of each dollar. So when previously you can say like, yeah, what worked last year will work again this year. We're fine. Let's go ahead with it. Now you need to seriously look and say, okay, last year we did a big promotion for gift cards, but this year you're only doing curbside to go. How can we help you like not only maintain that, but how can we help you grow that particular audience for you? And so I you know, Jay Earl, he's got a heck of a job ahead of him. And luckily he's a guy who doesn't let anything rest under his feet. So I imagine he's out there chomping at the bit, talking to people and really trying to get to know each business.
Oh, definitely. Well, and the thing is too, Jay actually found another job, so we're training in, or maybe not training in. We have a couple new faces with HPR. Alicia Underley Nelson is back with us, and she's going to be doing some ad revenue or ad sales. And we have another guy that I haven't met yet, but he's out of state someplace. But it'll be kind of interesting. It's going to be a whole 2021 is going to be a whole other animal for HPR.
Have you guys thought about changing the way you guys do business as well? And obviously you've made some major changes with the amount of time that you have, or the amount of issues that you're putting out on a regular basis. But have you thought about trying to focus on like a digital edition? I mean, you know, I hate to say that because I love the smell of printer's ink, but I mean, that seems to be the way a lot of organizations around here are going.
Right. And we've kind of talked about it a little bit. Like we have a website right now, but personally, I'm not really that big of a fan of it. It's almost kind of like a blog setup, but it's nice to, you know, it's a nice as a free platform so people can share their articles and, you know, do some good PR with it. But I've been working out in Ashland in Vishik with Tony Bender, and I'm learning so much about the business side of print media. And, you know, and I was kind of trying to talk to John and Raul, and it's like, well, you know, they have online subscriptions, and I know that there's people throughout the entire state that really want to subscribe to HPR, but we don't do that. And I think that we're kind of missing out with that, which, you know, granted, it's going to take money for postage and all that, but, you know, it kind of takes money to make money.
Well, I also think the ability too is the nice thing about online is you never run out of space on websites, right? So if you want to do a huge holiday edition and get everybody to write an article about what Christmas means to them, you've got that ability. If there's stuff that, you know, quite frankly isn't suitable to print, but to home someplace, you know, that's what you can do with it. So I find it intriguing that 2021 will be a year of pretty drastic change, I imagine, for the HPR. But sometimes you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet.
Oh, definitely. And like, you know, and I've been talking to a bunch of people, like a lot of my artist friends and fellow creatives, you know, like we're all trying to adapt and we're all trying to, you know, figure out how we're going to, you know, how we approach our craft, you know, when people can't gather or are discouraged from gathering, I should say. And it's definitely a whole new animal. And we're seeing all kinds of, you know, it takes a lot of creativity, and I don't know, it's interesting. That's for sure. I guess nothing stays the same.
Let's talk a little bit about Wishek, North Dakota.
Uh-huh.
I forget. Are you a vegetarian?
You know, I'm kind of a half-hearted vegetarian. I cheat because I feel if you're a vegetarian in North Dakota and you get invited to a barbecue, you don't want to be that jerk that's just like, oh, look at all this delicious food. I'm not going to eat a thing. So I eat sausage, and I also try to attribute that to being like super German too. It's my culture. It's the meat of my people.
So it wouldn't be offensive to say like, hey, next time you're in Wishick, would you mind grabbing some sausage and bringing it back to Fargo next time you make here? Because have you ever been out to you must have, right? You must have been out to one of their sausage festivals.
Okay, so I was like super stoked. I've always wanted to go to Sauerkraut Day in Wishick.
Yep.
It's been like one of my dreams as a North Dakotan. And the year that I'm working out in Wishick and Ashley is the 1 year in 92 years that they didn't have it.
Oh, Sabrina, you are in for just an absolute treat. It is, I mean, the amount of sausage that they make, it's hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And there's something like over 200 gallons of sauerkraut go into that giant like roaster thing that they've got. And it is such a fun celebration. I've been there twice. And if someone told me like, hey, do you have an afternoon free? We're going to go out to Wishick and we're going to sausage it up. I'd be like, sausage party. Yes. It is one of the ultimate experiences. So unfortunately, since you didn't get it this year, you'll get it in the future. You'll enjoy it. You'll have a blast. In fact, I'm waiting for the year when someone like tells me, yeah, I met my husband at the sausage festival, and then I went into labor at the sausage festival, and then this is our son, tubular meat.
Well, kind of interesting around here because there's all these little towns that are, they're full of Germans, and when you bring up this neck of the woods, everybody loves Wishick sausage. It's delicious. They have and I found out that they use the same recipe that they've used since the 1930s and probably even before that.
Mm.
And, but you go anyplace else in the state, Wishick sausage. But like you talk to locals out here about it, and I like to make this comparison that, my Fargo hipster friends will tell me all these, we'll tell each other about all these bands that nobody else has heard about. Like out here, they're a bunch of sausage hipsters, man. Like, you'll bring up sausage and they'll tell you about butcher shops that you've never heard about. It's like, well, Wishick sausage is okay, but, have you ever been out to Long Lake? How about Eureka? How about Forbes? It's pretty interesting. I'll have to bring an Iron Curtain variety pack.
It's interesting.
I'm noting that sausage hipster will be the episode title of.
So a few years ago, so you want to talk about disappointments from 2020? A few years ago, I had the honor of performing at the North Dakota, the North Dakota Meat Processors Association. So it's all these small town meat lockers that get together, and it's a trade show for them. But then they also talk about, okay, well, where are we going to put some money into lobbying, to do some stuff? Because I didn't know this until a couple of years ago, but the rules around making sausage really vary from state to state, and certainly even within the state. And so Minnesota's dealing with that right now, like when it comes to deer sausage and what constitutes the ability to create that sausage and then sell it. So if you go to a farmer's market and they've got deer sausage, and that deer sausage wasn't made in a let's say a class 4 commercial kitchen, you can't sell it in the open market. And it's causing a lot of problems for some of these places that get their particular sausage from a smaller town, straight from a farmer somewhere who's been making sausage for the last 30 years and selling it to a local butcher shop, or smoking their own sausage, things like that. And so I was set to have my second performance for them this March, and of course that got canceled because of COVID. So COVID cost me an in-depth look into the world of North Dakota small town sausage for the second time in my life, and it's a real bummer. But I do love it, and I love the fact that we are a state that really loves its craft beer. We also love our craft sausage, and there are also delicious other things, which brings me to my next point. So I follow you on social media, Sabrina, and it seems like you are always just cooking up a storm that plays into your German heritage? Let's talk a little bit about food.
Okay. Circling back to Ashley, I always like checking out these little grocery stores, especially around the holidays, because there's a bunch of, I especially love bakeries and baked goods. And here, like everything is, they keep their identity intact. And it's kind of like coming home, or their cultural identity intact. And it's like coming home because, they have a pfefferness. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh no. I don't know how to turn that off. Did that do it? Do I still have you on here?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But I was at the grocery store here in Ashley the other day, and they had ground anise on the counter, and then they also had, and then I made friends with the store owner. He's like, my
Ground what?
Ground anise, which is or anise. It's a spice that's used in traditional German baking, and they also have baking ammonia.
Got it.
Keep going. Which is kind of interesting because it's an old school leavening agent, and we use that for some of the cookies that we make in my family, because my grandma's German, and she has this old dusty cookbook that's all beloved and stained and earmarked and all that, and we make these cookies that have been in our family. The tradition has been in our family for the past 150 years, and we have some molds that we use that are all hand carved wooden forms. But we would use we would call it Hirschhorn salts, which means deer horn salt. And traditionally, like in the Middle Ages, and even probably, I don't even know until how recent, but it was made from ground reindeer antlers. And one of her favorite tricks for like greenhorn bakers was to tell them oh, smell this, and just about singes your nose hairs off. It's not very pleasant. But I think
cooking ammonia, does it? I mean, you're like, smells like a cat peed all over these cookies.
My favorite. So it's very strong smelling, like when you use it, and you only use Grandma would say a Messerspitz, which is a knife tip. So you'd only use a Messerspitz of the Hirschhorn salt. So it's powerful stuff. And sometimes, and I guess you don't want to use it for bread and stuff like that because it will have a little bit of an ammonia stench. But when we make Springele and stuff like that, you can't really taste it. It's a very mild cookie.
So is baking your ultimate love when it comes to German food? I mean, is that where your passion lies, or are you also into things like soups and stewed meats?
I do make some meat Knäpfle soup, which I'm kind of proud of. But it's not all that traditional. We wouldn't make that very much in my family. Like we'd make Spätzle, which is a lot like Knäpfle. But I do mostly baking because I don't eat a lot of meat, and a lot of these German dishes are very meat heavy. So I mean, we do have certain dishes that like Linse and Spätzle, like what are lentils and the Spätzle noodles, which are homemade, very similar to Knäpfle. But my grandma and I's thing would be that we would sit and we'd bake, and she would always. I grew up with her making these really beautiful torts and cakes and stuff, and she wouldn't make Kuchen. Kuchen is more of a German-Russian thing, and she'd get really offended when people would ask her if she would make Kuchen or if she would make a Kuchen for them. Like she wouldn't make any American cakes and stuff like that. And I don't know, they're not too terribly sweet, which I like.
NDSU has an amazing cookbook set that's like Germans from Russia.
Yes.
That we've interviewed a couple of the people who've put together some of these cookbooks, and it is amazing. And it's amazing how much your heritage can be defined by the cooking you do. A lot of people think, I want something for me to connect to my ancestors. What am I going to do? Cooking right there at the top, because a lot of things that my ancestors used to do, I can't do anymore, like kill people.
Right.
I might as well really lean into like some of those delicious things. And there are some ancestral backgrounds that have amazing food, and there's some that are a little wonky. For example, I'm Scottish on both sides of my family, and the Scots never really nailed any amazing food. People think of haggis right off the bat, but I remember cockaliki soup is something we enjoyed. They primarily made food that you could take with you when you went to go herd sheep or to go farm. So what they would do is they would make some kind of a meat and vegetable slop, and then put it in bread, and then bake the bread until it's really hard, so that you don't have to wrap it or anything. You just have this chunk of hard, crusty bread you take with you, and then you bite into it. So, I mean, really, we've been doing Hot Pockets since before many other cultures were doing Hot Pockets. But it doesn't make for great stuff, right? It keeps you alive. It doesn't make your taste buds go like, oh, this is amazing. And so I'm always a little jealous when my friends with German heritage or French, or even like some of the Middle Eastern desserts are just amazing. Oh my good gravy! And so I'm always a little jealous when someone can tell me about the amazing stuff they make with their heritage. Now, that being said, I also feel like I get a little bit for the Midwest card, and I would challenge anybody's tater tot hot dish to anything made in North Dakota without a doubt.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's so interesting with food, too. Like, what a great way to share your culture, too, and it's one of those, food's kind of a universal language, it's something that and it's so fun. And it's been kind of tough, too, like with this whole pandemic, because it's fun. Like, the best part about baking and cooking is like sharing what you did with, somebody and offering them nourishment. It's like the ultimate like friend, like gesture of friendship. But and plus, I mean, like if you're by yourself, you don't want to have to eat something for 2 weeks too. Even the good
There's
stuff.
There's some absolute truth there. Yep, absolute truth. Are you someone who prefers small town life over big town life?
That's kind of a tough one, because I think that each place has their charms. Like I do like the small town atmosphere, but I mean, there's not very many options for going out on a Saturday night. It's kind of tough to meet people, especially in these really isolated communities, especially when you're the weird tall girl in town. Maybe one of two liberals in the county, But I mean, the city is great too, because you have your options. You can do I guess before the plague year, you could go out and go to a show, or go and eat at whatever restaurant you felt like, instead of just having the greasy spoon or bar food.
I imagine the dating scene in small town North Dakota is probably pretty odd. I had a friend who moved up to the northern part, like pretty much right by the border, and he was excited because he's going to go work on his aunt and uncle's farm for the summer, and he's like, I can't wait. I can't wait to go meet these small town girls, and like I'll impress them by being from the big city. And I called him about a month into it, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Have you met the love of your life yet? And he goes, no, I was totally unprepared. He's like, I drive a Fiat. Like, they look at me like I am the weirdo, and I don't know what I'm doing. And quite frankly, I am. And all of them can drink me under the table, and they all have known each other since they were little, and they've pretty much been betrothed to each other.
Right.
So,
it's crazy because people in small town, like, they get married at such a young age, and and they have their kids and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm the odd man out because never been married, never, don't have kids, don't want kids, and that's kind of a different thing. Like and it's one thing, like when you're a girl out here, like you can get a pass for being a little weird, but like I can't imagine. And plus I have gone out a couple times, and women don't really go out to the bar by themselves. And I guess
Which is just bizarre.
Yeah. I was kind of talking to these guys the other day, and they're kind of like, "Oh, well, you have girlfriends? Why don't you bring them out? There's no women around here." It's like, well, I suppose they're not hanging out at the bar.
So they want you to be like, hey, could you call some friends, bring some friends out here? That'd be great. We'd really love that. And then what do they expect, right? Like, oh man, you know what? I love it out here, and we might as well just put down some roots. Might as well make it happen. That is the thing that I try and explain to people about small towns in North Dakota. Is I said I am always surprised when I go to a small town in North Dakota for an improv show, and I meet the people who moved there from like Chicago.
Right.
Or, like, oh, well, we had been living in Indiana, and my husband, got a job up here. And so we moved the whole family up here. And I think you moved your whole family. You almost doubled the size of the town just by moving in. What's it like? And, and nobody has said like, oh, well, we feel like outsiders. And they all said, well, it's different. And we want to be a part of the community. And there's certainly gatekeepers to certain things. Like she said, this one woman had told me that they had volunteered to help with like the parade, like the 4th of July parade. And there were some people who said, and they had made some suggestions like, oh, well, we could do this and we could do this. And they were like, no, that's not the way we do it. And they had to deal with that mentality. And I think that's tough stuff, is when you're trying to suggest change and growth, and you get met with a no, thank you. That's not the way we do things around here. You betcha.
Or else even the kind of like the concern, like, oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Topic change.
Nobody wants to come out and directly say no. What they want to do is they want to be like, oh, okay. So yeah, well, that's what you think, huh? Okay. Well, never mind.
It's a very specific type of passive aggression that Germans are able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Or just like flat out aggression. Like, nah, what the hell? No. What? Sorry. It is kind of tough out here, like meeting people, because and getting a job at the paper, you have to have your ear to the ground for news. But if you're the outsider, people aren't going to really open up to you or approach you, and you're supposed to know about these things that are going on. It's like, well, can I get involved in some kind of like, do you guys have a historical society? Do you have a I don't know. I'm trying to feel it out.
Let me ask you about that. Okay, so working for a smaller town newspaper, how do you is there enough going on to create news? Is there, I mean, I think of even in Fargo sometimes I wonder how they fill the pages of the forum sometimes. Right. And so I'm curious to know, because obviously things happen, but have you had to kind of switch your mentality of like, okay, what is newsworthy to write about?
Right. And that's and right now, I mean, like with all this COVID stuff going on and different developments with that, there is quite a bit of news there. But I mean, otherwise it is kind of a slow news time because, there's nothing really going on. If there were events, they're canceled, and yeah, it's definitely, it's different, so then I'm trying to like put out my feelers and be like, are there any artists in the area that we could do an artist profile? I bring out my HPR brain, and plus, yeah, and again, not really knowing anybody, like you can't really, I don't know, it's tough to think about sources, and yeah, it's different, as they say.
Sabrina, do you believe in aliens?
I suppose that there are aliens. There's actually a really good, did you ever hear about the Tappan alien? So there's a good story surrounding that. In Tappan, North Dakota, in the early 2000s, there was a report that there was this family that lived out there between Tappan and Pettibone, and there's some weird things going on at the farm. There are weird lights, like some of their animals would end up missing. Like one of their sheep came home and was missing a testicle, which I don't know how that happens, but apparently aliens, man, right? So this kid decided that he was gonna like hang out in the barn one night and see like who the hell was taking his who was taking their livestock. Was it a coyote? Was it, who knows? So apparently he's in the barn with his little 22, and these huge creatures came in, and it said in the report that they were between 8 and 9 feet tall, and they didn't look human, but they had human-like characteristics. And he fired on them. He shot one of them, and I guess this creature made this like otherworldly scream or whatever, and it set him back. And he woke up the next morning, and his shirt was shredded, and he had no recollection after that. And they had the sheriff come out. There's a police report filed. Like MUFON, the UFO Society, came out there and filed a report. And yeah, I mean, and that's that. And I guess they wound up taking one of their prized hogs that was pregnant. And when you talk to the locals, they'll kind of, they'll lower their voices and they'll tell you like their side of the story, what they've seen, or if they think they're full of malarkey or whatever. So I don't know, if you ask anybody from around Tappan or Kidder County, like there's a lot of alien theories out there.
I love to hear people talk about aliens. I don't know where I sit on it, quite frankly, but I do enjoy hearing people talk about their experiences with aliens, because at some point you have to imagine that even if what they experienced wasn't real, they still had an experience that was so visceral and so real to them that you have to kind of question what's going on. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because there was even a time that one of my friends and I, we were having a long night, and we're finishing off our night up on the rooftop of my old apartment building on Robert Street, and we're sitting up there and we're drinking a 40 or whatever, and we're all looking over the edge and looking at the sky or whatever, and we saw these three things in the sky like move like super fast and then out of sight, and we all kind of look at each other like, you saw that too? But yeah, I don't know. Aliens kind of scare the shit out of me.
To me, like, I can't imagine that if we were ever to visit another planet, right? Like, let's say we send astronauts to Mars and we land there and they find people. We didn't have any intention of going there for anything but science. So I find it hard to believe that the first interaction we'd have with another set of creatures would be anything other than, exploration. That being said, boy, oh boy, if you think it's tough to decide who's allowed to get married in the United States now, imagine if we had outer space aliens and it's like, well, I love this alien, I'm going to marry it. And Gleep, Glorp, and I, love is love, even in a galactic level. That's an argument I can't wait to hear.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that.
To see if people are like, well, the Bible doesn't say that is true. It's like, well, the Bible doesn't mention anything about aliens, so I think we're in uncharted territory here.
Right.
As we kind of are working towards this unknown future, in January of 2020, I knew what my future held. Right? Like, I was like, oh yeah, I've got this job, I have an amazing wife, and we've got projects we're doing at the house, and I knew where my life was headed. And now, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what their future is supposed to be, and what we're going to do, and how connected we're going to be to each other in a global sense. has what you want to do with your life changed at all? Not what you're doing, but what you want to do with your life during the pandemic.
That's a really good question. I've become more of a homebody. I mean, I've been cooking and baking and stuff like that. So now, I never really thought about like really settling down, but I do really like the idea of being out in the country and living my best prairie life. And with this opportunity working out in Wishick and Ashley, I don't know, it's interesting. I feel like more of a grown up, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love the idea of just how people's perspective has changed. And it really makes you remember like what's important. It's almost like, and this is unfortunate because so many people have died, but it's like we all are having a near-death experience right now.
Right.
And we need to step back and kind of take stock of like, I've become more of a homebody. I realized this. I realized I had been taking for granted how the simple things in my life bring me so much joy. Things like going to a movie bring me such incredible joy that I have missed it, that that I've dreamt about it ever since. Not fantastic vacations, not these huge, like events and stuff like that. I miss something as simple as sitting in a movie theater for 90 minutes and having popcorn fall down my shirt because I'm eating so much of it.
Right.
So I think it is. I think a lot of people are changing what they want and how they feel. The HPR, going back to that real quick, the fact that people aren't getting together. I mean, you guys were already doing some remote work type stuff where people would just email in what they have for you. But this, I imagine, has solidified the fact that you guys, it doesn't matter where somebody lives, they can write for you from anywhere.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I mean, Raul and I have we even put papers together in Spain and Norway, so we can, and that's the nice part about HPR is we can be anywhere and we can still put a paper out.
Do you think that, are people grabbing issues when you put them out? Like, are people really getting back to reading something on paper?
I think so. See, and I haven't even really had a chance to check out the newsstands. I haven't really been in Fargo, which is super weird. I almost feel like I broke up with Fargo somehow.
Oh, and you have to have that time in between, before, like, you don't want to bump into each other at parties.
Who broke whose heart here, Sabrina? Be honest. Who broke whose heart here?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure yet. But it's like one of those things where I come back to Fargo and like I'm still very, Fargo's very much a part of me, but I'm not hardly there anymore. But it's like one of those where I come back and it's like, oh, you've changed so much, Fargo. But there's these certain things that I really still like about you. And remember this? Remember Metro Drug?
I imagine going into like a favorite watering hole and being like, whoa, you guys got to touch tunes?
Right. Well, at least Duffy stays the same.
I remember a good friend of my dad's who was just one of the most amazing men I've ever met. Talk about a guy who knew the generosity of time and just being an awesome human being. He lived in Fargo for a long time, and then he moved away. He moved to the cities, and then he lived in Iowa, and then he lived in Wyoming, and he worked with auto dealerships. And I remember the last time he came back and he said, where would you like, I want to meet you for lunch. Where would you like to go for lunch? And I was like, oh, let's go to Porter Creek. And he said, well, where's that? And I said, oh, it's on the corner of 45th and just a few blocks south of 13th Avenue. And he's like, 45th Street. And it had been so long that he didn't realize that 45th Street had been built up in Fargo as much as it was. And he was a little dumbfounded. He goes, I was coming in on I-29 and like all of a sudden, like the city started at 60th Avenue South. And he goes, I remember when 32nd was the first off ramp and it was just dirt on either side.
Wow.
And I mean, it really is amazing to watch your city grow and change, and the fact that we continue to grow out is unfortunate. I wish we would grow up a little bit more, but
Right.
what are you going to do?
Right.
But recently, I went back to one of the neighborhoods I lived in Chicago, and it had drastically changed. Oh my God, I didn't recognize anything, and a place I used to go that made the best sour cream.
Ooh.
Like they would put the sour cream on everything, and they said it's a different between you use like an acid in one or like a culture in another, and they use the acid, and it's rarer and rarer now that someone makes their sour cream with that. But that place had closed down and was now like a Bennigan's,
Oh,
and I was devastated. And I thought, oh, if only I could have come back sooner and enjoyed it. And somebody told me that the old couple who ran it decided like they were just done. They were done. And they didn't want to, go through the rigmarole of selling this place and watching someone else try to run it. They were like, nope, we're done and we're closing down. And there is something, I think, to that as well, that this year has kind of showed, it's shown a light on the people who have built a really successful business, but maybe just don't want to do it anymore.
right.
Maybe they're just done.
Right. I've been thinking about that quite a bit lately because whenever I drive out in the country, I always like to stop at these little bars and cafes and, make friends with a bunch of grandpas, and it's crazy because there's all these there is an aging population out in the country. And I just wonder, it just seems like a matter of time before all these places are gone. Cause I was just, because I used to go around, and then every place I'd go, I'd get offered a job, bartending or whatever.
Yeah.
They're looking for weird tall girls that talk too much and ask too many questions. But now it's gone from getting offered a job everywhere I go to like, oh yeah, you're looking to buy a bar? I'm like, not in this economy. Sorry.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Do they mean a bar or do they mean some bars?
Some pint.
Like a tray of bars.
See, in that case, I would definitely be buying a tray of bars.
You know what I think would be an amazing project for you, Sabrina, is I would love to buy a North Dakota cookbook that is solely based off of your adventures in every county in the state.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty amazing. I mean, you do you. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life, but should you just be out and about rolling around, you might just start collecting some recipes, right? And you can put them together in a great cookbook, and
that's
boom, there you go.
Yeah. I was talking to Tony Bender the other day, and I was just like, man, maybe the way that I need to start meeting people is maybe I need to, like, instead of going on a bar crawl, maybe I need to go on a church crawl. And hopefully
Yeah.
hopefully I don't like ignite when I walk in, but
I think you're going to be, I think so many people out there want to share not only there's of course the faith aspect to it, but so many people want to share the story of their church. And,
definitely.
Some of these small town North Dakota churches have such just interesting history to them. In Kindred, there is a church that's now been converted into a home.
Oh, wow.
And the church is an exact replica of a church that exists in Norway. And the Norwegian settlers decided they were homesick. And so one of the easiest ways they could fix that would be to make a gathering place. So they got the plans for this church, and then all the Norwegians got together, and, within a year, they built a church that is an exact copy of one in Norway. And I think that is, to me, that's such an interesting concept.
That's so cool. While I'm staying in Ashley, I actually stay in an old church. Like, I'm sitting in one right now. I sleep in the choir loft. It's really cool.
Really?
Yeah. So if you guys are ever in the area, then you should totally come out.
That's the other weird thing too. I had to drive to New Rockford for a funeral in July, And I was like, oh my God, this is the farthest I've been away from home for months.
Right.
And I miss it. You know, I do miss some aspects of traveling. Like, sounds weird, but like I love a hotel room. There's something about a hotel room that I can't get enough of. So,
Oh yeah.
and at some point in 2021, I hope that I can travel again. And one of those travels will be to come to visit you and Ashley. I want to check out this church you're staying in. What denomination of a church do you know?
I don't know what it was, if it was a Lutheran church or what the deal is, but Tony actually had it moved onto his property, and it was from Chud.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's super cool.
Sabrina, as we wrap this thing up, let's talk about things we want to do in 2021. And I'll go first on this. In 2021, one of the things I would like to do is attend, if we get this whole vaccine thing up and running, some street dances, because I don't feel like I went to enough of those in my youth.
Right. Oh, they're so much fun.
Oh, you talk about like a small town. Street dances are amazing, where they just close down a street, they bring in a live band, and everyone dances, and they enjoy some barley pops. Mistakes are made. It is just a fun adventure in a small town, and it's also like you see people who put on their dress denim as well. And dress denim is something I love.
You shine up.
I think we all got to. The three of us got to find a time to go to Vegas, I think, in 2021.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what we do.
I think that's what we need to do. Absolutely need to. I want to, in 2021, I want to go to the hill climb in Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Go to more rodeos, I think. I always enjoy a good rodeo, and I didn't go to any this year. I guess they haven't all been canceled, but you don't really want to go to in the plague year.
How's your line dancing, Sabrina?
It's a little crooked line dancing.
Yeah. Is it more like triangle or dancing?
Right. I usually end up looking at the person's feet next to me.
I feel like that would be a fun adventure, is to get together and do some line dancing in 2021.
Oh, definitely. There used to be a group of line dancers that would meet at the Vets Club when I worked there in Jamestown.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then one of my first shifts was like, well, I didn't know that there were dancing girls in Jamestown. And they just looked at me and they were not impressed with my joke.
Well, sometimes you just gotta say, like, you know what? It is what it is. And if you guys don't like it, you guys can just sit on it. Now, hand me a sausage and I will be on my way. So, well, Sabrina, it's always a wonderful time chatting with you. And I hope that things are going wonderful for you. And please stay in touch, okay?
Oh, definitely. Thanks for having me. And you guys, we need to plan a trip. Well, we need to plan our trip to Vegas. We need to plan some street dances. And you guys need to come and check out Tony's church, because it's rad.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. Why is it that when I think of cheese in North Dakota, I only think about Velveeta? No, I mean the comedian Velveeta. He's so cheesy.